Good evening and Merry Christmas. It's really great to be here together, whether this is your first time joining with Christ Central Church or whether you are part of this church. It's wonderful to be here together where we meet regularly each week. And we'd always extend a warm welcome to you. I'm Fergal, I'm part of the team who lead the church here, and we're gathered here to celebrate Christmas this season. And it's wonderful to hear such great voices and to hear so many people singing around this room. At Christmas, we often reflect back on the year that has just been before looking ahead to a new one. This year, we've seen a lot of changes and challenges globally. Many countries, including ours, have had elections. And trust in leadership has been one of the main issues, the significant issues. And it's natural to wonder, what has the world come to? Who can we trust? Perhaps that's a question that you know far more closer to home than just what's in the news. But that question isn't a new one. It's been asked all the way through history, and it's the question that brings us to the heart of hope in the Christmas story. As we say, look who has come to the world. In the readings and in the songs that we were singing, we hear how a king has come. A throne is going to be filled. His rule will be right. Old promises are kept. The one who gave us life and who made the world has come in to this world. Many of us have at least once in our life probably lay awake at night wondering if the world always will be this way. Whether there is a God, whether we could believe, and whether that's something that could give us hope in life. If there is a God, what is he like? Just another figure of authority, uncaring and unapproachable and distant? Well, the Christmas story gives us an answer. Don't take my word for it. On the handouts that you were given, on the very back, you have that last reading that Theo read for us. You can hear it from the horse's mouth as we read what the text says. This is no fairy tale. It doesn't begin with once upon a time. It's saying something happened in a time, in 1 year, in a real place. Fairy tales don't really matter if they're true or not. They have a meaning to them. But this is a story that only matters because it's true. We heard that there were unsurprising shepherds who were working the night shift, and they are suddenly surrounded by something that surpasses their surprise. If you imagine being in a small car on the motorway at night, being tailgated by a Tesla with its blinding lights, it's probably not far off what the experience would have been for them. No one expected angels to show up. It's not something that they would have really begun to believe their eyes at first. But if there is a God who has made this world, then there's more to this world than blue skies and brain chemistry and Bailey's hot chocolate, as heavenly as that is. If there is a God, he can make what he wants and do what he wants, and he makes angels to show up on the night shift. And they say, don't be afraid. Calm yourselves down. There is good news for all people. And by definition, that means there is good news for you and for me. And then they say the most astonishing thing. If you look for him, they say, the sign that you will have found him, that God has really come into this world among us, is this. You will find a baby snugly wrapped in strips of cloth, lying in a manger. If you are familiar with these words, if you've seen school nativity plays or you've sung carols many times before, these can be very familiar, sweet lines in a story. But just imagine the scene. This is not the image of power and prestige that we might expect for a king. Well, let's put it into perspective. My wife Kerry and I are expecting a baby in the new year, and we've been looking into buggies and cots and Moses baskets and mattresses for cots and all sorts of things. Every time I walk into town, I'm counting the number of different brands of buggies that I can see, making a list, seeing which ones might be good or not. And we've been scrolling through Facebook Marketplace trying to find deals on all sorts of things. But imagine I've been at home and Kerry walks in from work and she asks me if I have seen anything on Facebook Marketplace that's a good deal. And then I show her the description. How happy would she be? Used, poor condition, reclaimed animal feeding trough, comes with straw, wet with animal saliva. I don't think that would go down well. But imagine telling our midwife that our birth plan involved a long journey, no bed, no room, but a floor where the family kept their livestock. Who would choose that for themselves? Well, this tells us something profound about the very nature and character of God. We see Jesus described as a king. The government will be on his shoulders, and yet this is what he chose. At the start of World War II, a chaplain named Tom was deployed to support the Scottish regiments. And he tells the story of one soldier who, moments before passing away, asked, "If there is a God, is he anything like Jesus?" He needed to know what God was like before he met him. And Tom replied, "There is no reason to fear. God is exactly like Jesus." This humble beginning is significant. It foreshadows his life and his sacrifice on the cross. And we've already sung it. He came down to earth from heaven, who is God and Lord of all. I recently heard someone say, the first Christmas after I began following Jesus, I sang these lyrics, which I'd known all my life, and the top of my head came off. It was like discovering a secret world inside your childhood home. Why would God stoop so low? Well, if you want to take a heavy Christmas tree home, you have to squat down. You have to get under it. You have to disappear into the branches before you can carry it home. If a diver wants to find treasure, they have to throw themselves in, sink to the bottom, vanish under the black and cold water, down under the increasing pressure, down under the slime at the bottom, and then they come up again, bringing with them into the light, bursting with breath, holding the dripping, precious thing that they went down to redeem. The Christmas story is about a God who comes down from heaven, down to the bedrock of creation, down to the pain of our world, down underneath the weight of all our wrongdoing as a world, down into death, down to lift us up to life with him. His birth in a manger and his eventual death on a cross show us a God who comes close to us. It reminds us that no matter how messy or broken our lives may feel, we can trust him with our life. In one of the readings, we heard the angels say, "Glory to God in the highest heaven and peace to earth, to all those whom God is pleased with." This peace is not just a temporary absence of conflict, but a deep, abiding peace that knows what it means to be rescued, known, and loved. Jesus' birth and his death were a way for us so that we can have relationship with him, free from guilt. The author of crime novels and the poet Dorothy Sayers once said this: "I'm so glad that Jesus was born in a stable, because my soul is much like a stable. It is in poor and unsatisfactory condition because of guilt, falsehood, and inadequacies and sin. And yet I believe that if Jesus can be born in a stable, maybe he can also be born in me." As we conclude our service tonight, singing one last carol in a moment, if I can invite the band to come, I invite you to reflect on one of our very first readings. We heard in our first reading, he came into the world, the very world he created, but the world did not recognize him. He came to his own people, and they rejected him. But to all who believed in him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn, not with physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God. that can be you if you can trust him. Because the news at Christmas is this: God has come into this world and gone as low as possible to put his arms underneath us and lift us up to come back to him. God has come into this world because he wants a relationship with you, if you trust him. So as we celebrate Christmas, let's remember the true nature of what God is like as he has revealed himself in Jesus. A God who comes to us in the most unexpected ways, who offers us a peace that transcends all understanding. May you leave with a greater understanding of the true nature of God and the peace that comes from knowing him.